Can hear me on here? Wonderful. Thanks for the introduction, Dr. Plain. When I was 5 years old, I really wanted to be the president of the United States and a chef at the same time. That was a dream. And now I make part of my living making Barack Obama's crustless coconut pie and eating like Donald Trump for a day. So that's kind of the closest I'm probably going to be to being a president and a chef at the same time. And the path to get there was incredibly nonlinear. When I came to Juniata, I was undeclared. As you said, I kind of quickly picked up a POE in politics and philosophy and started to dig into a lot of different interdisciplinary colloquia, as I think the term was at the time. I took interesting classes in philosophy and math, quantitative methods. I took symbolic logic. Don't recommend. I don't know if that's still around, but it's really difficult. Oh, it's a good class? Oh, that was my hardest class. I did terrible in that. And there was a turning point for me, though, in my kind of Juniata career, and that was when I went to the DNC for a work study for a week. And the DNC was in Denver. In 2008 was when Barack Obama was getting nominated, and this was something that was offered as part of the politics department. And it was a full work study week where you got a placement with basically an internship for a week. And my internship was with Fox News, which was, at that point in my life, that's what my grandma watched all the time. That's what I knew it as. And I was excited to be placed with a media company. Wasn't thrilled about being placed with Fox News at the time. But the week that I spent there, and the week that I spent in Denver in 2008 was pretty transformative. I got to see the behind the scenes of what politics looked like. What I thought was politics was actually entertainment. So I would be eating lunch next to like Karl Rove and Shep Smith and all these hosts and famous faces at the time. And I saw that they were all just kind of like putting on an act. They were putting on a show for the cameras. And I was like, oh, this isn't really like politics. It is, but this is also entertainment and media. And so I started to, transform my college experience a bit more. I took more film classes. I took more time in the DMS. It's actually called the DMZ at the time, the Digital Media Zone. I'm glad they changed that name. Zone. And I made a short film here of my own volition. It wasn't even a part of kind of the curriculum, but I just had the opportunity, had people who were open to it, professors who supported it, and got to pursue this kind of liberal arts education at my time here. And by the end of my college career, I was excited for the next step. I was moving on. I was like, hey, maybe we're going to go to Los Angeles and get into politics and media. I was pumped. I graduated in 2010, which if anyone remembers, like 2008, 2010, it was a pretty rough recession. And so I came out of college and applied to 100 jobs. This is before like LinkedIn, Easy Apply, and stuff like that too. So I applied like to 100 jobs and didn't get any of them. And the job that I ended up with, it was very humbling, honestly. It was a humbling experience, but I ended up working in a local movie theater and just kind of doing the work that I needed to do to make money, make ends meet, a cool $7.25 an hour. And I needed that job, I think. I needed that job because I was a little arrogant coming out of college with all my fascinating experiences in education. And through a year, I worked hard and I met with the general manager of Cinemark, and he said that he was going to give me a raise. And it was actually the biggest raise that they'd ever given a popcorn sweeper in the history of Cinemark. And I was kind of excited. And they said they were bumping me up to $7.42 an hour. And I was like, I have to get out of here. So I booked a trip to Los Angeles and fell in love while I was out there. My best friend was out there. Through some very kind of opportune circumstances, I was able to get a job and moved out there 13 years ago. I haven't come back since. I've come back since, but I've lived out there ever since. And the kind of long and short of it with my career out there, I was doing writing communications for various clients. I was writing pitches all the time and pitching TV shows. I was really kind of trying to combine the politics and media aspect of things for years. And I wrote on a couple of Comedy Central digital series, which is now defunct. And I was pitching, and it felt good to be pitching to these big, networks at the time. But nothing really panned out. And that was until I kind of just listened to this gut instinct that I had to make Cooking with Congress. It was this idea that just didn't let go. And I decided to not let it go. And since I started that blog in 2018, it's grown to be half of my living at this stage, making money through kind of a diverse revenue stream, writing for publications, making money from TikTok, which if I told my parents that, when I told my parents that, they did not understand what that meant, what that is. My mom still goes to TikTok.com on her desktop computer to view it. It's very kind. But I think that the running through line of why I was able to start this creator account, whatever you want to call it, of Cooking with Congress and have it work out over the course of time was that I treated life like a liberal arts education. I don't think I could have developed this to the point where I have, and I'm still learning and growing every single day, if I hadn't picked up everything along the way and followed a bunch of different passions and pursuits. I think that there is a great and kind of immaculate opportunity for generalists in the future and in the present. And you're told to specialize a lot. You're told to pick one thing and do it. And I don't know if that's still the case today, but we were certainly told, like, for certain tracks and certain fields, you stick to the track, go on down the line. It's very clear. The path is very rolled out for you. There's no real kind of diversions that are going to take you away from it. You'll be successful. But I think that for generalism, we're in a great time for it. The liberal arts education I got at Juniata and all the different things it made me do, from filming to writing, it made me a better thinker, a better worker. Nags over here, Nags had a paper that he no longer offers. He discontinued it 10 years ago. But it was a 4-page paper, and I've told this story before. 4-page paper with 11 pages of references. It was the hardest work I ever did at Juniata. And that taught me how to work. That taught me how to be dedicated and be focused. And Dr. Plain's political psychology class taught me how to, I think, speak in front of people with any sort of comfortability. And Jim, making a film with his son involved in the DMS at the time, that taught me how to film, at least somewhat, and know what looks good on camera. And so I took that liberal arts education into every aspect of life. I took an entire year, and this is privileged to be able to do this, but I took an entire year to try everything that I thought I hated, just to see what it felt like, because you don't know until you try it. So I thought I hated music festivals. That was not true at all. It was great. I loved it. I thought I hated ketchup. I still kind of hate ketchup. You gotta try it. And I think that year of exploration, the kind of constant testing of yourself, the constant exploration of new and unique avenues that aren't in your POE, right? That has proved to be important for me. I think everyone's experience is going to be different, but generally speaking, the only pearls of wisdom that I have, and I'm right at this interesting point in my career, to be like totally candid. I feel like it's different with legacy media versus social media and the new kind of media landscape. I'm in the point in my career where if I had to track it to legacy media, I'd be like, okay, I maybe like sold a script, got it produced, and made like a little bit of money. And now I'm working in writers' rooms here and there. And I have a lot of friends in the entertainment industry who are in that place, who are beyond. And the next steps are unclear. But it's growth and curiosity leading everything. And I think that the curiosity is something that gets fostered here at Juniata and other liberal arts colleges as well, but at least in my experience here. And it's something that if you're successful in life, you have to be curious. You just have to continue being curious. So take the time also to develop your curiosity, take the time to develop your intuition too. One thing that I have noticed in my kind of career journey is whenever something feels right, I wish I were a data and analytics person. I feel like that would fit the world better, but it's just not how I make decisions. I think when something comes up and it feels like the right move, that's been the right move. But I had to take time to develop that intuition because it was garbage when I was like 17. I didn't know what I was doing. My intuition was off. So taking the time, finding the silence and the space where it's a really difficult time to find silence and space when you're working hard, you have jobs, you have classes. That's a really big piece of any liberal arts education and any, I think, success. And then just remembering that, you know, the world's not linear, so play the numbers game. Again, you never know what you like or don't like. You never know what you're going to pick up one day and be like, I thought I was into math, and then I tried archaeology, and archaeology is the thing that I care about forever and ever and ever. But you're not going to know until you try an archaeology class. And I'm sure there's so many stories that people have of making that transition, you know, their sophomore year, whatever it is. But your path may not be linear, and be comfortable with that. Because my path from being a 5-year-old who wanted to be the president to cooking with Congress was not linear whatsoever. And a lifelong liberal arts education, that's kind of my goal. And I think that's led to, for me, a lot of happiness, a lot of joy in the work that I get to do, and a lot of personal success, even if by some metrics that's like, oh, well, that's not success to me, but for me it is success. And I hope that you pursue that liberal arts education here, and I hope that you continue to do it for 10, 20, 50 years. And with that, I'll open up to questions, because I want this to be more kind of interactive than me just talking the whole time.
Just raise your hand, Bennett will call on you. If we need to bring a mic around, we will, but hopefully we can just speak louder.
Yeah.
I'll start you off with a hard one. Who was your favorite professor? And don't feel pressured by these guys looking at you now.
Yeah, which one's not in the room right now? I'll pick him. There we go, I'll pick Barlow. It's too hard to pick a favorite professor, you know that. But I will say that something that I really didn't realize how incredible it was that, like, coming back here, all of my professors remembered me. Like, I don't think that speaks volumes about me. I had like a memorable haircut, but other than that, I think it speaks volumes about the kind of culture here. You know, to be able to come back and have Jim and Dennis and Emil be like, of course we remember you, of course we, you know, like, we would love to see you again. Like, that doesn't happen at every school. I know that from personal experience with other people who were like, whoa, you're gonna like go hang out with your professors? That's insane. Like, but it's special, it truly is. Also Jack Barlow. Yeah.
What's your favorite dish that you made?
My favorite dish that I've made for Cooking with Congress. So I'll pick two. The most recent one they made that I really liked, I remade Barack Obama's crustless coconut pie, and it was pretty delicious. It's custardy, toasty, easy to make too. Big fan. And then this coffee gelatin, I think I mentioned last night at my lecture talk. It's like Japanese coffee jelly, and from Representative Kika de la Garza. It's espresso, gelatin, and then rum-infused whipped cream, and then just layered all the way up. I would serve that to guests, which is rare for anything that I make on Cooking with Congress. I mostly hide stuff from guests, so that's probably my favorite. My other favorite that is disgusting, the two disgusting favorites are Richard Nixon's ham mousse, because it's beige and slimy and kind of like Richard Nixon. And I tried this frozen mayonnaise dish recently with Jell-O, green Jell-O, like lime Jell-O, and mayonnaise and cottage cheese and pecans. And like, that's not good. And if you put that in the fridge and try it, it's bad. But if you put it in the freezer, it's like, you ever put your teeth on a chalkboard? No? Yeah. I have one time now, at least with that one. So the frozen salad was rough. That was pretty bad. But I loved it. I love when it turns out bad like that. Good question. Thanks for giving me the chills again. Yeah.
So I know you mentioned that you eat like a bunch of different presidents. Which one was the worst?
I got hungover the next day after Donald Trump. He doesn't drink alcohol or anything, but I got hungover after eating 2 Filet-O-Fishes, 2 Big Macs, and a chocolate malt shake for dinner. That was because the sodium content's like 3 times your allotment for a day. So The next day, I like just took 4 hours in the morning to try to walk it off, and I was like pounding water, and that felt pretty bad. I will say at the end of that day, though, I felt accomplished. When you eat that much in one sitting, I was kind of proud. I was like, I still got it, yeah. But I felt the worst the day after. The food-wise, I have to say, like, the Joe Biden diet was just kind of like boring to me, and that is like the biggest offense. I'd rather have something be like crazy. George W. Bush's like cheeseburger pizza. I was like, this is not my favorite with like just gallons of ketchup on it, but it was interesting. The rest of the day, like the huevos rancheros was good, and Joe Biden's just kind of like nice and boring the whole way through. Special K and angel hair pasta with just plain red sauce on it. I hate being bored, so that was probably my least favorite to do. Although once we get to like, I don't know, I think Nixon's going to be bad. He liked cottage cheese with just ketchup on it. Not a good start. Yeah.
What is the oldest dish you've made?
The oldest dish. Well, the one that felt the oldest, honestly, was when I made Millard Fillmore's Resurrection liver pie, which felt medieval. In like the torture sense, but also like it looked medieval too. Getting your hands on beef liver is not that easy in certain parts of America. So I had to like search for the beef liver and then make it into a pie. It was more of a casserole. So it felt very old. It wasn't super spiced or seasoned. I am so happy that we have like a proliferation of spices now in today's markets because that was pretty liver forward. But I also have made I made George Washington's eggnog, and I want to make a few others from that time period. John Quincy Adams's golden alligator springhouse cake is technically, I think, one of the oldest ones that I've made. That one was good. Didn't look very pretty, but it tasted really good. I was talking about it with Jim last night. It doesn't have alligator in it or anything, but it has Madeira, which is a fascinating flavor profile. It's pink, and it's got candied fruit on top, and tasted really good, honestly. I was a big fan of the golden alligator springhouse cake. Also, killer name. Great name for a cake. Yeah.
So you talked about all the things you did here at Juniata and all the great opportunities you had. Was there anything that you felt like now you feel like you didn't get the chance to do that you kind of regret that you would encourage us who are still here to do?
That's a really good question. I was thinking about this last night at dinner, actually. And I did get to study abroad for 3 weeks on the Senegambian trip with Dr. Nagangas, which was fantastic. I look back on that as a really significant trip. Going to the DNC in 2008 was incredible. I wish that I had maybe studied abroad for a full semester. I graduated a semester early because I had some of the credits from high school. I also was trying to save that money. And at the end of the day, I just paid my student loans off like a week ago. And yeah, which like felt so poetic because I paid it off with money from like TikTok too, from like, which is, I don't know why, I just felt like I'm doing the Cooking with Congress, paid off the student loans. This is amazing. I think I would have loved to have studied abroad though for a semester. In retrospect, a year, I like saving the money for 6 months in the long run. Like it's an opportunity you don't really have to study abroad when you're in your 30s, right? So I wish I would have done that or taken another internship. Internships are critical for getting jobs in the real world. I think that would have probably led to me not having to apply to 100 different places to get a job at Cinemark. So do an internship. Yeah.
So we talked about last night in the lecture about how different foods and like different brands relate to certain economic standings. Which president do you think genuinely did have like some sort of like middle class upbringing outside of like the 1% with their choices?
So the two that I would say, I think Joe Biden did kind of have that middle class diet, and he genuinely appreciated middle class foods. The other one was Harry Truman stands out. Came from kind of an impoverished background, and his diet was really like Ozark food, like food from the Rust Belt. And back when everyone was getting into at the time, what was fancy, which was like box mixes and microwaving things, right? That was kind of on the rise. Jell-O was on the rise, which is hard to believe, but it was very popular, and that was a class signifier. It was like, oh, you can make a Jell-O salad? You must be fancy. He was all about making things from scratch, and he brought a lot of recipes to the White House for the chefs to make things from scratch for him. So I'd say Truman really exemplified that, had the kind of middle class, or even, lower than middle class palate and diet. A good question. Yeah.
How you apply to multiple jobs and got rejected and are working at theater? Did you ever feel regretful what you studied or scared for your future?
Did I ever feel regret for what I studied in college? Did I ever think that perhaps like a philosophy minor was not going to get me a job as a philosopher? I mean, I had some moments, yeah. I did. I had moments where I was like, that is not, like I should have gone into accounting like my sister, like, because she's doing great. But at the end of the day, like that's just not that wasn't my strength. And I'm a relationships person in general, so like the lifelong relationships that I made after that, like most of, I don't know, I would say I've worked with 4 or 5 Juniata alum out in California. Obviously getting to come back here is incredible, knowing the professors. Some of my closest friends to this day were people I met at Juniata and became even closer with after school. So I always had that relationship like background, and it was always really strong. So I never felt like, oh, like this was a waste experience or anything like that. And if I hadn't studied what I studied, I wouldn't have met those friends and whatever else. I did think that I wanted to do more media, I think, in the last year. I started to take them as individual classes. It doesn't change your POE or anything. But as an advisor told me, I think it was Dr. Nagengast, he was like, it doesn't really matter what your POE is. Like the classes matter, what you learn matters. Like your POE can reflect media or psychology or math or whatever else, just take the classes and soak up the knowledge. If they want to look at your transcripts, they can look at your transcripts and they can see you took quantitative methods or statistics. So I took what I wanted to take and learned a lot. Mostly though, my regret was about an internship. I was like, I really, really should have interned with a campaign or something. But again, like winter of 2010, campaign season was over. There was nothing that was heating up at that point, and the recession was in full swing. And so I tried as much as I could to like not make myself feel bad. I was like, you did the best you could, and looked at it as external factors, and truly like that I just needed the humbling experience of working in movie theater. I did also pick up another job during that time, which taught me a lot, which was ghostwriting the memoirs of a 99-year-old art historian, and that taught me a lot about patience. Yeah.
I want to ask an advising question for us, that you can give us advice. I'm fascinated in all of my decades at Juniata, how some students, what they go off to do after they graduate. And I've noticed that in most cases, it's not A's versus B's, or grades are not a predictor. There's something there that I don't want to say entrepreneurial spirit, that sounds too monetary, but there's an edge there where they want to go, they like the story you just told. You know, how many people, I wouldn't have done it back when I was whatever age, pack up, head to LA and say, I'm going to make a go of it out there. So to come around on the question is, I mean, is there anything we can do to kind of instill that extra spirit, and just to give the counter, as opposed to a student that is scared of everything, I just want to get out of here and go back home and work at the local bank or something. Is there anything we can do? And then the second part is that something you, looking back on your own life, you think you came in the door with that attitude? Or was there some value added that Juniata instilled that?
That's a really good 2-part question. Has anyone seen the show Hard Knocks by chance? Yeah, okay, a couple people. This is an athletic reference, so like if you're not into sports, hold tight. But there's a player on the Detroit Lions, his name's Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he got drafted in like the 4th round of the NFL draft after 16 other wide receivers, and he memorized the names and the schools of every single wide receiver that was drafted before him. And he looks at them every single day, before every single game, and he is now one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League. And it's obsession. He doesn't seem like a super fun dude to be around. But I think there's something inspiring in like the way that he approaches his craft, which is with a certain level of tenacity. And I think that tenacity, you see a lot in sports, you talk about a lot in sports. You don't really talk about it in other realms, except, like starting a business, maybe athletics. But I think that can apply to anything. I think that can apply to the way you attack your schoolwork. I think it can apply to the way you develop relationships even, just like with tenacity. And so I think that's maybe one of the things that I frankly did not have as much of when I was in high school. Looking back, I don't think I was an incredibly tenacious 16-year-old. I think I was pretty laid back. I remember like being in a class and the question from my like US history teacher was, what do you think is the most dangerous thing in the world? And I said, I was thinking I was really smart. I was like, complacency. And she was like, it's funny that you're saying complacency. And I was like, because I just had this kind of laid back attitude and that self-image too. I was wearing all tie-dye, I had super long curly hair, you get it. I was laid back and and so I think I had to drop this idea of who I was at the door a little bit here and really investigate the self. And that sounds esoteric and it's hard for a school to be, and hard for an advisor to just be like, investigate who you are. But I think that's a massive part of it. And we've talked about this, Jim and I have talked about this, and Dennis, I think you were part of that conversation as well, of just like finding out who you are is sort of your number one job for the next 60 years. And if you get to the end of it and you're like, oh, I don't really, have a central self, like that's a great answer too. Maybe just a collection of ideas. I don't know. But I think that having to drop the self-image, get rid of this idea of like, well, I'm just a cool laid-back guy who just likes to, go with the flow and whatever. That wasn't really my truest self, and to discover that at Juniata, that's, I think, incredibly valuable. And then as to what you did specifically, what any of my professors did specifically to let that happen, I think it was just pushing, pushing when and encouraging people to work hard. Like I came in with no work ethic, essentially. I truly believe that. And I think I learned a work ethic from being at Juniata, and took that kind of mentality, that athlete's mentality as a non-athlete, into my creative work. And so I hope that kind of answers your question a little bit. I don't know if anyone's ever told you should push them harder, Nags, but sorry. Yeah. What would be the most valuable learning outcomes? I think that getting people comfortable on camera and getting them to just breathe into it and not be so self-conscious, that takes a long time. I've worked in communications for a long time, and I've interviewed a lot of CEOs for various social media, and like 80% of the stuff is unusable because they are so uncomfortable. As soon as they're amazing. You talk to them, they're digging into their passion, they can talk about it so eloquently, and as soon as you turn a camera on them and they're like, here, let's film something for TikTok, it's just like, okay, hello, it is I. And you're like, there's no, the naturalness drops and it fades away. So I think, I was really excited to see, I'm blanking on the studio name, but in the library or whatever, they have that studio with like the podcasting equipment and a place where you can film yourself doing, I don't know, whatever else. Like that's incredible that's here. That was not here when I was a student. So I would say like that is such a big aspect of it. The thing that was surprising is I think it's just consistency. It's, I talked about the numbers game, like the numbers game in terms of trying to figure out what you want to do in life. The numbers game is also how this happened. Like Cooking with Congress was me, for no money, making dishes, like buying the ingredients and making clam pie like at home for me and like my wife who did not want to eat it for an entire year every single week, and posting it on TikTok and like seeing and trying to like dig into the analytics and all that stuff and seeing how it worked, and also writing the blog and also trying to pitch to publications and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it was just like being consistent so you can get lucky. That's really what it is. Because one of these days, like someone who has a connection Like for me, it was a reporter for NPR, just happened to be on TikTok and saw something they posted, and they were like, this is great. And then it blew up. Within 3 days, I was talking to Scott Simon on Weekend Edition. Whereas before that, I had like, I don't know, 400, 500 followers or something, and it jumped up sixfold in 2 days, and that felt really good at the time. And you just gotta get out there enough and play the numbers game to be lucky and to have opportunities, because it's luck plays a huge, huge role in any success, especially in social media and the entertainment industry. Don't let anyone ever tell you, if they like leave out luck from their speech about like what to do, that's bad. Luck is huge. Ryan, did you have a question?
Yeah, so thank you for being here. This has been excellent. I'm happy there are so many students in the room. And I also want to mention, you just very directly stated our brand statement of think about who you are.
Did I?
And so I teach a lot of students integrated media and portfolios, and yes, finding their passion to do a passion project. I'm curious from your perspective, similar to Jared's question, how for students that struggle to figure out, one or two things to really focus on, students that are interested in all things, from someone in the field, since your work is media focused, what are the things for students or for faculty that we could tie together to continue to encourage for them to, yes, be their most unique and passionate selves, and to portray that when they're interviewing for jobs, rather than, right, I just do design, or I just do video, or I just do this thing. Because we know when you graduate from Juniata, you know to do a lot of things. So I'm curious from your perspective, right, the unique things that we share here, how can they take those? I have some seniors in the room that are narrowing down their research projects. So how do we take these things that we're passionate about and turn it into their portfolio, their marketing for themselves, right, their self-promotion, and what have you seen that's successful in that area?
Storytelling is key to any of it. A job interview is storytelling, right? A research, anything that a Fulbright scholarship is storytelling. An application is storytelling. I think the focus on narrative, even if your path is nonlinear, you can still tell a story, right? I think of it sort of like, I've done a lot of work editing, and you get these big kind of massive interviews from people. You're like, this is fantastic. I hear your voice coming through, and I still have to find the narrative within it. And so staying true to your voice while recognizing what an outsider needs to see and hear, which is a story. Because we're not there yet where you can be like, well, I went all over the place here and there, and circled around here, and then I did this and then I did that. Even today, like I left out some things of my career that like didn't quite make sense in this context, right? Like I'm really, really good at making cocktails because of a weird job I had like 6 years ago. That doesn't really fit with this, right? It doesn't quite match the narrative. But it is a part of the story. It's a part of my life. But if you're talking to an audience, you just have to know they're still looking for story. And especially if you're applying to grants, if you're applying to internships or jobs, the narrative of who you are, it doesn't have to encapsulate everything about who you are. It doesn't have to capture all of you. You're just telling a story for this one moment. You'll have the chance to kind of show more of yourself once you have this role. There's so many times where I've dialed down, told the story of who I am for a client, I get hired on, and then later on they're like, oh, you also ran events for 2 years? That's amazing. You can help out running events? Well, let's hire you on for more work here. So you get a chance to really kind of showcase that diverse set of skills. Is that a quote from Taken? I'm really sorry if that is. I have a diverse set of skills. But you get to showcase that later on once you've kind of opened the door with storytelling, I think. Yeah, in the back. Okay, so would I change my POE at all if I were to go back and re-individualize it? There's certain classes I probably wouldn't take because they were incredibly difficult. and to me at the time, I mentioned symbolic logic. Sorry, symbolic logic. I know Bryce is gone, but he was like, thumbs up to that class. That just was not how my brain worked, and I knocked my head against the wall and still never figured it out. So there are a few classes I might switch around, but I really started to do that anyway in my senior year. I started to kind of transition towards politics and film. I took a French film class, started to go towards the media anyway. I don't think that I would, I made the joke about being a philosopher. Like there's not a lot of philosopher jobs out there when you're 22 or ever. It's not 800 BCE. But I still think philosophy taught me how to think and how to write and how to make an argument. And again, like taught me some storytelling. So I don't think I would change all that much. I think the politics obviously is a part of my life now. If there were a cooking class on campus, maybe I would take that though. A food class, maybe if someone was teaching like some sort of history of food class, that would be a good one to take. Yeah, I don't know. And to the second question, so am I understanding it correctly? What dish would I make to represent Juniata College? Really hard. All right, so it's gotta be Scrapple based. A dish to represent Juniata College. Man, that's really good. I mean, I think I think of certain meals when I think about Juniata. I think about the surrounding community. I think about, is Waltz still around, that restaurant? Closed a while ago. Waltz was a restaurant where I had a friend who went into Waltz for breakfast and left Waltz after dinner. And he got his name on the wall because he ate everything on the menu in one day. And they just let him write his name on the wall. And so I would, in his honor, and as a great Juniata memory, I think I would blend up all of the menu items from Waltz, mix it with some gelatin, and freeze it. That wouldn't taste as good as my Juniata experience, obviously, but it'd be fun. Exactly. Get a lot of different flavors in there, yeah, for sure. Any other last questions? Yeah, Maggie.
So going forward, do you want to keep doing what you're doing, or do you think you'll move on to something else? Is there like an end goal, and how do you think your liberal arts education will affect that?
Great question. So goals are they can be delicate. So I don't talk about all of them, right? Because like dreams are fragile. So some I'm going to play it close to the vest until we get there. But I was just like interviewing on a podcast and I said that same thing. I was like, I don't know what I want to share here because dreams are delicate. But I would love to start getting other people to taste this stuff, not just me, because it's fun. Because like I would it would be great to like watch like Dr. Plain eat frozen salad also instead of just me. Wouldn't it be great to like see Jimmy Kimmel eat this stuff? Like that's, I think the next step is to bring more people in on the fun and the horror of it. So to me, that's the next step. I have a lot of folks I know who work in like the comedy space out in LA, especially with stand-up comedians. So like my goal is to start filming more two-person with them, maybe some horizontal instead of vertical, we'll see, and get their reactions. Because I think like they're stand-up comedians, they're hilarious, they're funnier than I am. I am gonna make them eat cottage cheese jello with me and just kind of like have a back and forth. So I think that's one aspect that I'm really excited about. But the cool part about having something that's yours is that it's, for me at least, just like bubbling with ideas, and I just don't have enough time. So if I get to be fully self-supporting just with this and have like no other income except what's coming from Cooking with Congress and the various kind of connected opportunities and creative avenues, that's the goal, is to make a full-time living off of this in whatever way kind of works with my life, you know. And so maybe also the world's worst cookbook one day. Oh, and I didn't answer the second part of your question. How did the liberal arts education kind of connect to that? Again, just like to be able to do that, I need to learn how to pitch better, right? I need to learn how to develop recipes. I need to learn how to lead a team for developing a cookbook. I mean, like, if I really want to make a cookbook one day, which would be fun, it's a lot of work. There's a great podcast out there, The Sporkful, that goes through the process of him making his pasta cookbook. And I was like, this is a ton of work. It's like a lot of back and forth with recipe developers. You have to make the connections there. You have to go on tour and sell this book constantly. And so it's all a world in which I'm like, oh, I'm so curious about what that actually looks like. And so I want to get good at all the surrounding aspects, at least good enough that I can start to make it happen. And I think that's that liberal arts education kind of coming into play is how do I learn what I can in every single possible new avenue that this series can go? Yeah, good question. So I came close to being a politician, actually. I ran for city council in 2020. It was in the middle of the summer, and I felt like, honestly, I was making Cook with Congress at the time, and I was like, this needs to be like I just didn't feel it. I just didn't feel it that year. And so I put it aside and tried to run for city council in my local town, and did not win, unfortunately. But the campaign was fascinating, and I did win like 80% of the college vote, I will say. Students really showed out. But the student vote was also like, it's a mostly 60 and up voter populace, so did not win. Anyway, what dish would I make though? That's brilliant. I wish I would have had a dish then. I could have won. I'm like a pasta person. Like my favorite thing is just like pantry noodles, whatever. Like whatever you can find in your pantry or in your fridge and put it together with noodles is my favorite. So like if you get good at flavor combinations, you're like, I know like the 2 or 3 things that go together. Like, okay, I got like a can of corn, I got some feta, I got a bunch of green onions. I can make a really good like noodle dish with that. So I'd make some kind of noodle dish that would have a clever name that I can't think of right now. It'd be so clever. Yeah.
Were you always an adventurous eater, or has this sort of like broadened your spectrum? Do you find yourself trying more things now than you did before?
I mean, I'm definitely trying a lot more now just by volume because so many of these foods are new in the way that the base ingredients are combined. You know, like no one, when I was a kid, was combining mayonnaise and cottage cheese and ham and Jell-O. So I think that I am tasting more just by that kind of that series. But I was always an adventurous eater. I grew up in like rural Pennsylvania, and I feel comfortable sharing in this room, but I've eaten like a lot of strange foods coming from rural Pennsylvania. Has anyone eaten squirrel here? Yeah. How about raccoon? Yeah, okay, Jim. All right. How about possum?
I draw a line.
Yeah. Groundhog, fox. Yeah, there we go. There's some weird ones. My dad was like a primitive archer when I was growing up, so like a primitive bow hunter. So he would go out and he would like cut down a tree, make a bow out of it. I'm not exaggerating. He would cut down a tree, make a bow out of it, and go out and like hunt animals. And so I got to eat a lot of really strange and interesting foods that way when I was a kid, and just kind of have always been up for trying anything. And there's really only a few foods I just don't like flat out. Ketchup is one of them. I'm not a big ketchup fan. But otherwise, like I'll try anything once, and most things I'll try a few times because it takes a while to get used to it, you know? Like, you're not gonna like possum on your first try. You're probably not gonna like possum.
All right, so let's thank Bennett.
Thank you. Need the mic?
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Bennett will be here for at least a few more minutes. If you have any individual questions for him, make sure you come up. And then on behalf of the politics department, we have a little gift for you.
Thank you.
So now you've got some politics department branded swag. So,
thank you so much.
So thanks again for coming, and it's been great seeing you again.
Thanks. It's great to see you. Thanks for being here. It was fun.